Hey everyone, UCL Fantasy Matchday 2 is finally here after a super, or at least what felt like a super long wait. In today's episode, I'm going to talk you through my team selection for the new round and my potential transfer strategy. So let's get straight into it. So before we take a look at my transfer plans, let's have a look at my provisional squad for Matchday 2. Now, you'll notice I still have a really rubbish goalkeeper rotation pairing. I have Jaros, who's only 4 million. He plays for Ajax. I've got an Ajax top on. That means he's keeping a clean sheet this week. He plays on the first day. He plays away to Marseille. Now, Marseille have failed to score twice this season already in their first 7 or 8 matches. So they have shown some bluntness, albeit they did beat PSG recently. I do think there's potential there to keep a clean sheet. If one of these goalkeepers do keep a clean sheet, then they're likely to produce a haul because of how many shots, volume of shots they face and potentially save. So I have hope this week with my goalkeepers. If Jaros doesn't keep a clean sheet against Marseille, then I do have PSV's Kovar. Now he's up against Leverkusen, both facing tricky away fixtures this week, which again, I think, it does kind of increase their whole potential, not necessarily clean sheet potential, but if they do keep a clean sheet, again, there's potential they could haul and rack up save points. So it's only 8.5 million. Again, I knew going into the season with these goalkeepers, it could be tough, but there is still potential there. Yes, they failed to keep a clean sheet in matchday 1, but they have 2 good, fairly decent opportunities this week. What I didn't realise is that both rotate really well all the way up to matchday 8. So both play on different games, different days, right up to matchday 8. So if I didn't want to play a chip, then these 2 goalkeepers could rotate really well all the way to the final round. So they're my goalkeepers going into this week. I have no plans to change them. So in defence, as you can see, I've still got Denzel Dumfries, one of the best defenders in the game, playing for one of the best defenses in the game. Inter have already kept the clean sheet against Ajax. I thought it was a really professional clean sheet from them. So it looks like they're going to continue their kind of good defence this season, as well as obviously what they produced last season. Dumfries is yet to show his attacking threat in the last few games, so he did start the season with 3 attacking returns in his first 4 matches. So we haven't seen that yet in the Champions League, but we could well see it against Slava Praga at home this week. Now, I've also got Pedro Porro, who I think is a little bit more of a risk. Obviously, didn't start for Tottenham against Wolves in the most recent round. We've not really seen any attacking threat from him at all, which is a little bit of a concern. But he's only 5 million. I think I am concerned about his long-term minutes, though. That could be an issue that I have to resolve eventually. But for the time being, against Bodo Glimt, I think he has good potential this week. I don't think he's a major concern just yet, but I will definitely be monitoring him long term. Now, Calafiori, again, he could be another potential minutes risk. I know he's started most games for Arsenal so far. And I do think he will start this week and come off early, but you just never know, right? That, Arteta has been playing with Calafiori for most matches, starting with most matches. So, it's one of them, isn't it? Does he have a rest soon? It could well happen, but, a home match against Olympiacos, I just think it's a good opportunity to keep a clean sheet. I think selling him would be stupid. He's at 4.5 million, obviously one of the cheapest routes into the Arsenal defence. So really happy to keep him. Now, Real Madrid have a lot of different injuries, Carvajal, Militao, there's a few there, enough to kind of make you second think the Real Madrid defence, but they are playing Kairat this week. I think it's a good chance for them to keep a clean sheet. I do think they'll keep a clean sheet, although Kairat were quite handy against Sporting last week, probably could have scored a couple of goals, or did score one, and wipe the Sporting clean sheet. Now, I do still think that Howson is one of the best, defender options in the week, in going into this week, though. Yes, he doesn't have much attacking threat, but we could see ball recoveries, we could see a clean sheet. So super happy to kind of hold on to Howson. That obviously one player that I'm not kind of stoked to have is Inacio. I think a lot of people started the season with Sporting assets because of their first fixture against Kairat. But now they face Napoli and Marseille, which isn't exactly, really appealing. It's not the end of the world either, but I just think there are so many, options at 4.5 million or 4 million that you could go to with better fixtures. So Inacio is part of my transfer plan. I think I will definitely consider moving him on. Now, before we go into my transfer plans, let's take a look at my midfield. Now, in defence, obviously, I've got Mohamed Salah. He scored and assisted in matchday one. I was quite surprised by how well he played, actually, because he didn't really convince in the early parts of the Premier League season. So he plays Galatasaray this week, who shipped 5 goals to Frankfurt in the opening round. So again, really, really happy to have Salah going into this week. I wouldn't know where I would put the money if I were to sell him. I think that's the same for Elise. Apart from the budget, I think, at 8.5 million, he's an absolute fantastic, he's a steal. I feel like you have to own Elise at 8 million, 8.5 million. But I think the fixtures are good now for Bayern. Obviously, they play Paphos and Club Brugge, and Bayern are relentless at the moment. They are scoring like 3 goals in most of their matches, at least 3 goals in most of their matches. So absolutely relentless. Now, yes, there's some doubts on who is going to start, against Paphos, because they have games against Frankfurt and Dortmund coming up in the Bundesliga. So there are question marks over it, but you can't really sell or not own players based on if you think they're not going to play, especially the likes of Elise, who is so explosive. 3 goals and 2 assists in 5 league matches already. You just have to own him. Now, I've also got Xavi Simons. Obviously, I've not been convinced by Tottenham at all. I explained that with my Porro pick. I think in general, they haven't been great. I think they were excellent against Wolves in the first half, but then poor in the second half. And Xavi just hasn't settled at Tottenham. I know we got the assist recently in a recent game, but hasn't really done much outside of that. It doesn't seem to be settling well. I'm not too sure what's going on with him. Kudus, in fact, I think looks a better pick than him at the moment, but I have got him. We'll see. It's a great fixture though, Bodo Glimt. I think, when you look at fixtures and fixtures to target, Bodo is one of them. I think they conceded 2 in the first round. So if Tottenham are going to start firing, it has to be, against these guys. Now, I've also got Anthony Gordon, very happy to own him. He scored against Barcelona in the first round. He actually nearly scored in the opening minutes of that game as well. So constant threat, it feels like, for Newcastle. I feel like he's a big game player as well, in these tournaments, does well in these big games. So I'm really looking forward to owning Gordon this week, going into the match against USG. Now, I haven't got many captaincy options on the Wednesday, and I think that Gordon could be a really good captaincy option. We get to see the lineups as well, so I could, decide whether I want to captain or not. So really like Gordon going into this week. On my final midfielder, and someone who I have considered selling, and we'll go over that in my transfer plans, is Pedro Goncalves. Now, the swing between him and Trincao was not nice. It was 13 points in match day 1, but he's still a great asset. He scored unassisted prior to that Champions League game. He's also scored in his last couple of matches as well. Scored a goal in 2 of his last matches. So I really think that he is still a great asset. He has Napoli and Marseille this week. Napoli haven't been great defensively, or at least it feels like as of late. They conceded 2 goals to Milan pretty early in their latest match. And Marseille aren't really that good at keeping clean sheets either. Although, again, they did keep one against PSG, which was quite surprising. So it depends where you can move Goncalves. At 6 million, it's difficult because there aren't many options at 6 million or below that I really like. There are above at 6.5 million. But yeah, we'll cover him more in my transfer plan. So let's take a look at my forward line. So up front, I've got obviously Harry Kane, who plays Paphos away from home. Again, when I built my built my team ahead of match day 1, I had this game in mind, against Paphos. I wanted to have Elise and Kane. They both, Kane did really, really well against Chelsea in match day 1, and now I've got them both for Paphos. Kane has been relentless. He's probably been one of the best strikers in the world at the moment. 16 goals already this season. He's been relentless. He's managed like 2+ attacking returns in the majority of his matches this season, which is insane. So he could be a really, really good captaincy option on that first day. Now, choosing between him and Mbappe is going to be a major, confusion. It's going to be a debate and a half internally for me right up until the deadline, because I think Mbappe is more likely to play more minutes. So it's a case of minutes versus, potential output. Do I think Mbappe is going to play more minutes? Yes, because Company is likely to shield Kane. They've got tough games coming up. Obviously, already mentioned Frankfurt and Dortmund. Dortmund are second in the league, just behind Bayern. So, they will want to make sure they win those games, or at least, perform well in them. So shielding Kane could be an option. So whereas with Mbappe, I think he's going to start playing most of that match actually and do it well. And I think Real Madrid are going to score plenty of goals against Kairat. Now, Thuram was pulled off early in his recent Serie A match. He's been kind of matching Lautaro's output. Lautaro did score in the most recent game when Thuram didn't, but this week against Slavia Prague, I do fancy him to score, return big. He got a brace in the previous Champions League match, so I'm really, really happy with this front line. I haven't really got any thoughts about changing my strikers, although having Haaland this week for day 2 captaincy would be good, but I just think you can guarantee on Kane. You can guarantee on Kane and Mbappe returning this week and returning well. So I don't necessarily think we're going to need a captain for day 2, but I think just have one just in case, and that is what Gordon is for me. So yeah, Kane, Mbappe and Thuram, super happy with that front line. And hopefully we see a repeat of Matchday 1 where they all braced. So transfer plans, you can see that my team looks in pretty good shape this week. I haven't really suffered from any injuries at all. I've got quite lucky avoiding a lot of the major injuries. Obviously, Rafinha, Carvajal's been injured, Militao's been injured. There are just so many injuries in Europe this weekend. So for me to avoid them, I'm very, very lucky. And I'm also very fortunate to have a really good team moving forward. So my transfer plans are quite limited, quite tame. Some would say quite boring. Inacio is likely to come out this week. It's just whether that's one move or as part of a kind of double move. Now, Inacio could go to Bellanova. We get the Atalanta lineups. He's only 4 million. It would mean saving 0.5 million and rolling a transfer. So I would have 3 free transfers next week for match day 3. And I would also have 0.5 to kind of have a little bit of money to play around with in terms of upgrades. Now, I could just do a straight swap for a Cherby. He didn't start the last Inter game, so he should start this week. But long term, he could be an issue. This is an aggressive move, so I'm not hugely keen on it. I could go for Svensson at Dortmund, who recently scored. He's 4.5 million. But his fixtures aren't great long term either. If I was going to get rid of Inacio for Bellanova, it would give me the 0.5 to upgrade someone like Yildiz, one of Juventus' standout attackers. Probably, I would argue, the standout attacker. Was fantastic against Dortmund in the 4-4 draw in matchday 1. Hauled as well. He's been hauling in Serie A Fantasy quite often as well, quite in his last 2, but has the potential to be super explosive. So really like him as an option. Or I could just, again, just keep it down to one transfer and bank a free one for next week. My team looks really good this week. I'm rather happy with it. And my moves seem quite boring. And my moves actually could, backfire. Could I see Inacio keeping a clean sheet against Napoli this week? Potentially outscoring Bellanova, a Cherby maybe. Could I see Goncalves outscoring Yildiz as well? Because Yildiz has an away match against Villarreal. And then Real Madrid. So really, really tough decisions this week. I think it's a case of, my team looks good. So I'm trying to squeeze the use of transfers out because you can only roll one transfer this week. So it would make sense to, at least, think about how many transfers I'm going to have going forward. Having 3 free transfers next week could actually save me the use of a chip long term. So I definitely have that in mind. I have in mind, long-term moves as well. But they are my options so far this week. I'm not exactly overjoyed with them, but I will keep digging into alternative transfer plans. So guys, that was my team selection for Matchday 2. If you enjoyed that video and you want more UCL Fantasy content moving forward and content for the Euros Fantasy, World Cup Fantasy and FPL, you have to hit that subscribe button. And please remember to like the video and I'll see you guys again soon.